fact is, she came in when Trump was kind of off of a win of 2024. His approval ratings are in a disaster right now. He's not going to get somebody of her talent. The fact is, she does lie every day for him, but she does it in a convincing way. And the next person is just, he's not going to be able to.
For New Jersey. And then Scott Jennings, a CNN political commentator, he was actually asked about it last night.
Why wouldn't Trump just take the call from Putin while the other leaders were in the room? He said it would be disrespectful to do that. But why is it disrespectful?
With all due respect, only a reporter from the New York Times would ask a question like that.
What did the president mean when he called a reporter piggy?
Look, the president is very frank and honest with everyone in this room.
Welcome back to Top Debate Commentary. Today we are diving into a major shakeup at the very center of political power. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt is stepping down from the podium. As President Trump faces rising geopolitical tensions, economic hurdles, and upcoming midterms, replacing one of his most articulate and fiercely loyal defenders is proving to be a massive challenge. CNN host Audie Cornish and a sharp panel of political analysts break down who might step into the line of fire next, examine Karoline Leavitt's intense podium legacy, and debate whether anyone can truly fill her shoes at the White House press briefing. Let's get right into the action and break down these high-stakes exchanges.
Talk about those potential somebodies. Prediction markets, who of course are on everything these days, are looking at a long list. They've got Anna Kelly, just the deputy press secretary. Next person up, right? Lara Trump, the president's daughter-in-law, Fox News host. Alina Habba, the former acting U.S. attorney for New Jersey. And then Scott Jennings, a CNN political commentator. He was actually asked about it last night.
Are you throwing your hat in the ring?
Yeah, well, first of all, are you throwing your hat in the ring? And
will you serve, Scott? Answer the question.
No, look.
Answer the question.
I don't know.
Let me help Scott. Democrats are afraid of Scott Jennings becoming press secretary. There you go. Now you got the job.
I mean, that is kind of the criteria, but what are your last thoughts on this?
I think it would be tough for somebody like Scott to exit the role that he's playing now, where he can be an outside analyst. That's a really great position for him to be in.
Not reputational harm, which I thought was
exactly.
a great...
I think for some of the former Trump officials and allies, this actually is a great opportunity. Of course, you're walking into the fire's den, but most press secretaries and communications directors are in this role for a year or two. So the way I look at it for them is, if you can survive that year or two, the opportunities on the other side are enormous. It just depends on whether or not you're going to blow it.
I mean, look at Karoline. I just don't think the opportunity.
Yeah,
I just don't think the opportunities are the
look
same
at
as they
Kayleigh
used to be.
McEnany. Look, there's a lot of people who've actually come out on the other side. And going back to Sean Spicer, he now has his own show. He's been able to create a media career out of it. Even Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch lasted 10 days, but the Mooch is still on CNBC and is all over the place.
He had a company long before. I mean, the reputational damage for someone who is not a media personality before going into this is really hard. If you want to continue to work in politics, you are at the tail end of someone's administration who has a really low approval rating.
I'm going to give Governor Sarah Sanders a call after this show and ask her how it worked out.
She didn't become a national...
We open as host Audie Cornish turns our attention to the high-stakes guessing game currently sweeping Washington. Who will step into the pressure cooker as Donald Trump's next White House press secretary? Prediction markets are already firing on all cylinders, floating high-profile names ranging from Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly and Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, to former acting U.S. Attorney Alina Habba, and even CNN political commentator Scott Jennings. The studio desk plays a hilarious yet telling clip of Scott Jennings getting put on the spot on live television, where he dodges questions about throwing his hat into the ring, while fellow panelists joke that Democrats are already terrified of him taking the podium. Audie Cornish and her panel analyzed the delicate calculus facing anyone considering this job. For an outside media commentator like Scott Jennings, stepping down from a comfortable, lucrative analyst seat to enter the White House fire zone carries enormous reputational risk, especially in the late stages of an administration facing tough polling numbers. However, as the panel points out, surviving a year or two at the White House podium can yield massive long-term dividends. Panelists draw parallels to former press secretaries like Sean Spicer, Anthony Scaramucci, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders. While some turned brief or chaotic White House stints into lucrative media careers, books, or governorships, Others faced severe long-term reputational damage. The consensus across the desk is clear. Stepping up to represent Donald Trump before a relentless press corps is the ultimate high-risk, high-reward gamble in American politics.
Joke like a Sean Spicer. She didn't. Well,
He's a friend of mine.
Okay, you can defend him when I come back,
All right.
but he ended up with Dancing with the Stars and not in the history book.
That's a nice shirt
So I'm
he had
saying
on,
that.
yes.
But in the meantime, you had someone like Karine Jean-Pierre who had a very combative, rough reputation with the press. What is her legacy?
Incredibly responsive. If you reach out to Karoline Leavitt or anyone in the Trump press team, you got a response and you got it quickly. So that matters. I think people understood the role that she played was to defend the president beyond educating reporters. However, I don't think most people who deal with her felt like they didn't come back with answers. If they weren't the answers you like, that's one thing, but you got responses. And then the last thing is she's just a very eloquent speaker. Karoline Leavitt was easy to understand. She used plain, simple language that not just the press could understand, but the American people watching clips of her on Fox News could understand. So she was a very skilled communicator. She's going to be a very, very tough act to follow. I'm curious to see if Donald Trump is eager to put somebody in who the press can get along with, or somebody who's just going to defend his message till death, because I think the press getting along with your press secretary and respecting them, it actually does wonders. I think Karoline Leavitt's a good example of that.
I also want to give an example of some of the moments she had with reporters, because as you said, she was like, yes, she would get back to you, but in the room, she gave as good as she got. So here's an example of what she was like on the job.
The question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use?
If we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable.
Why wouldn't Trump just take the call from Putin while the other leaders were in the room? He said it would be disrespectful to do that. But why is it disrespectful?
With all due respect, only a reporter from the New York Times would ask a question like that.
What did the president mean when he called a reporter piggy?
Look, the president is very frank and honest with everyone in this room.
Okay, my communications people, who should be next? What qualities do they need to have?
The discussion shifts into high gear as the panel reflects on Karoline Leavitt's legacy at the podium and what made her such an unusually effective communicator for Donald Trump. Panelists highlight that beyond her sharp, articulate style and ability to translate complex policy into plain language for Fox News viewers, Leavitt achieved something rare in recent Trump press offices. She built functional, highly responsive lines of communication with reporters behind the scenes while maintaining absolute, unyielding loyalty to the president. To illustrate her combative on-camera style, the show cuts directly to a sizzle reel of Leavitt's most explosive moments at the White House briefing room podium. We watch as she aggressively shuts down pushback, telling reporters that the administration will hold news outlets accountable for pushing lies. In one particularly memorable exchange, when questioned about Trump's phone calls with foreign leaders, Leavitt fires back with razor-sharp sarcasm, remarking that only a reporter from the New York Times would ask such a question. Returning to the studio, the panel unpacks the dual nature of her role. Leavitt mastered the rare balance of giving as good as she got in front of the cameras, while diligently working the press corps off camera. Audie Cornish and her guests emphasize that replacing someone who could forcefully project Trump's message to his base while simultaneously maintaining functional working relationships with a hostile press corps will be nearly impossible for the administration moving forward.
Unless you are a true believer.
Adam, what are your thoughts on Karoline Leavitt's departure?
I actually, look, she was very good at her job. She is very good at her job, very impressive. I think it takes a toll having to defend this president all the time. And so I have no doubt her story that, like, look, when you're a mom and you have kids, working in the White House is very difficult on that. So I don't think there's anything more to the story besides that. But I think it is going to be a big hit for the Trump administration. I don't know who they replace her with. That is going to be as good as she was at it. She had the ability to, in even a couple of your clips, you're like saying obvious truth. And she'll just kind of look at it like, obfuscate, that's not true. And she had a classy way to do it. So I think it's going to be a hit for the administration.
I mean, this was probably the toughest role, and Trump won, I think. Obviously, we saw the cycle of people who filled this role, Charlie. But when you look at it now, 3 months ahead of the midterms, less than 3 months, Iran war, prices, all of these concerns, the president's own poll numbers are pretty bad, especially on areas where he's normally pretty strong, like the economy. What do you make of this?
Well, I think this job is going to get a lot harder. I've always just joking earlier. It's like being the designated spear catcher. You're going to get a lot thrown at you, and it's just going to get harder because if the House flips, the types of inquiries are going to be much more sharp and piercing. So I think that it's tough, and I agree with Adam that I think that she was on message most of the time for the president, and I think that was an honest answer she gave. She wants to spend more time with her family. Can't say I blame her because it's going to become a really difficult job for the next guy.
I know you probably disagree with what she says almost every day, but in terms of being effective at that job, is she one of the most effective White House press secretaries we've ever seen?
Yes, absolutely. And he's not going to find a better person because the fact is she came in when Trump was kind of off of a win of 2024. His approval ratings are in a disaster right now. He's not going to get somebody of her talent. The fact is she does lie every day for him, but she does it in a convincing way. And the next person is he's not going to be able to retain that kind of talent again.
I think her legacy is that she did an amazing job because her job was to please one person and one person only. And his name was Donald Trump. And she understood that every single day. And she succeeded every single day. And as far as her leaving, I totally respect as a mom wanting to spend as much time with her children as possible. But I'm a little bit confused. She's married. He's basically retirement age. Why can't he help with the kids? Maybe she thinks that he's going to be in a nursing home soon or something. I'm not sure.
Well, that's not. I mean, she has an older husband. But the point is, a lot of people say that as an excuse, but it seems like, I mean, when you've got two kids like that, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work to do.
Maybe she didn't like being a decoy on the Air Force One. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we have no idea why she decided to leave.
Okay.
In this final hard-hitting segment, the panel drops all diplomatic politeness and gets remarkably candid about Karoline Leavitt's departure and the sheer brutality of the press secretary role. Former GOP representatives and analysts weigh in on her decision to step back, validating her explanation that as a young mother dealing with grueling 18-hour workdays, balancing family life with the constant demands of the White House is an almost impossible task. However, the conversation quickly turns fiery when discussing the administrative realities waiting for whoever takes over next. With the midterms approaching, economic concerns lingering, and low approval ratings, panelists joke that the next press secretary will essentially serve as a designated spear catcher for the White House. The debate reaches a climax when one panelist delivers a brutal, unfiltered assessment of Leavitt's tenure, stating bluntly that while she was exceptionally effective because she knew her sole job was to please Donald Trump, her method involved convincingly spinning or obscuring the truth every single day. The segment ends on a surprisingly sharp note when a panelist raises eyebrows by questioning her family dynamic and making a provocative comment regarding her husband's age, causing a ripple of shocked reactions across the desk. It is a raw, unfiltered ending that highlights just how polarizing and intense the debate surrounding the White House podium truly is. That brings us to the end of today's deep dive into this White House press secretary breakdown. If you enjoyed this analysis, make sure to hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to Top Debate Commentary for more sharp breakdowns of the biggest debates on television.